go ahead and get started just to be mindful of our time. Greetings, everybody, and thank you for taking some time today to join us for this webinar session. My name is Fernando Alvarenga, and I'm with the Region 9 Head Start Association, and I'm excited to be your webinar host today. So if you have any questions about any Zoom logistics, any audio issues, video connection, feel free to shoot me a message in the chat box, and I'll do my very best to troubleshoot any issues you may encounter behind the scenes. Just a friendly reminder to everybody, this session is being recorded and we'll go ahead and get it to you within 24 to 48 hours. So if you miss any part of Pete's presentation today, don't worry, you will be able to go back and watch it on demand. And we'll send out a follow-up email that will contain a link to that recording. I'd like to thank OneAmerica and Retirement Benefits Group for their partnership. This session is sponsored by them. So thank you for your continued support and partnership to bring in these sessions up to our community. And now, without further ado, I'd like to pass it along to George Fraser from Retirement Benefits Group for a few words before we pass it on to Pete. Take it away, George.
Thank you very much, Fernando. And hello, Region 9 Head Start. It's so great to be with you again. As you probably may remember, if you've been on any other of these websites, we are folks who manage retirement plans. So we work with 403Bs and 401Ks and help the folks in Region 9 prepare for their retirement. I didn't know a lot about Head Start 3 years ago. I was lucky enough to meet Marcy Huchin, who was the director over at the Foundation for Early Childhood Education in El Monte. Further got to know Denise Cardoza at Kids Community up in Placerville, and Ed Condon and all of the team at Region 9. And we have been very engaged, not only in helping folks with their retirement plan and creating a more hopeful future for retirement, but also we've been working, you may be aware, on your scholarship program. Past 2 years, we've raised over $75,000. And I want to thank each and every one of you for the amazing, amazing work that you do. And to remind you that when scholarships come up this year, please apply. And I'm going to say this, you ain't seen nothing yet. When you see what we're going to do this year in scholarship, it's going to be amazing. So for this past year, I think we were able to produce about 20 scholarship opportunities, but we know it is going to be significantly better this year. So we want to thank you for all you do with the kids each and every day. I have two children, 23-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. So I'm way past the pre-K stage, but so delighted to be able to help the kids that you serve and by serving you folks. I also want to thank Matt Kassa, who is on the line, who is actually the sponsor of this particular event. He is with Tia Nuveen and has been one of the major seed monies for your scholarship program over the past 2 years. Matt is a Californian, originally a New Yorker, I believe, Matt, right? But he has he knows a lot about pre-K kids. He has a beautiful daughter, Juliana, who is 4, a young son who is 2, Joseph. And I can tell you, he's probably the most dedicated family man I've ever met in my life. So he is inspired to do everything he possibly can for you folks. So with that, Matt, I'm gonna pass it over to you and tell him a little bit about what your company does and why you are so engaged with Head Start.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it, and thanks everybody for joining us on the call today. So we are thrilled to be working with this relationship, not only with George, but with Region 9 in particular. Our organization, just by way of background, if you've heard of Tia Kreff, or if you've heard of a gentleman by the name of Andrew Carnegie, he's the one who started our organization over 100 years ago. So back in 1918, took $1 million of his own personal wealth to essentially create a retirement program for those folks in education. He saw it as a huge disservice to the people out there serving others, those teachers who are out there serving others, having nothing in place for themselves to retire with really any kind of dignity or security. And he made it his mission to create an organization that provided for secure retirement income with the advent of bringing about Tia Kreff. So that was 103 years ago now, and that is the underpinnings of our organization. We were literally built for retirement. And the products that we provide in the financial marketplace are ones in which George Fraser uses in a number of his lineups, extremely low cost, some of the best performing products out there. So it really only just made a ton of sense for us as an organization, history of working in the education field, to be working with you folks at Region 9. So thrilled to be here and supporting this great event with Pete the Planner. Thank you, George, for the intro. And yes, I do my best to be the best family man that I can, as my kiddos are just growing faster than I can keep up with. But thrilled to be here, George. I'll take it back to you if you want to give the proper introduction for Pete the Planner.
You bet. But before we get off, Matt, please show pics of your beautiful children if you've got them handy there.
If I can turn this thing around.
I've never asked Matt to see pictures that he doesn't have them very close.
Here's a little video screen, if anybody can see that. That's the
Joseph?
gift that my wife gave me of the kiddos that just keeps cycling through as I'm in my office, which is pretty cool. Keeps me going every single day. There's my little girl.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what? And I would tell you that what you folks do on a daily basis is so easy to talk about when we're out raising money, so that you folks can have better opportunities in terms of your education. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the man who makes everything very simple. That's Pete the Planner, who is amazing. You've heard from Pete a lot, but he's going to share with you some very baseline things for this year, 2021, after getting rid of 2020. Thank goodness we're past that thing. And one last thing, I count my blessings this year. This past year, despite all of the COVID things that took place, we were still able to start doing work with Denise Cardoza's group up in Placerville, and continuing our work with Marcy and her group over at the foundation. But for me personally, to be able to have my kids at home for the entire year, essentially, one extra year. And Matt, I know you'll be looking for that down the road, not for that reason, but it was really great. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pete. Thanks, Matt, for your support of the program.
Good afternoon, Head Start Region 9. It's your friend Peter. I mean, we're friends at this point. Let's be honest. We've done this several times in the last several months, and I'm glad to help kick off 2021 with you here today. I'd like to say it's nice to see your smiling faces, but I know you well enough that you are likely smiling. I just can't see you on camera because I'm just looking at myself here. But here's the thing. You know how these things work. We're going to talk about your money tonight. We're going to keep it casual. We're going to keep it conversational, and we're going to keep it interactive. I got to know what's happening in your life. So I encourage you to share as comfortable as you're comfortable sharing. And let's test your ability to do that right now. Hello, Becky. It's good to see you. So I want you to, right now in the chat box, we're testing your ability to be interactive. What are you making for dinner tonight? What is for dinner tonight? It is Taco Wednesday at the Planner household tonight. I see Tracy is also having tacos. This could be a Taco Wednesday across the country right now. So if you put in the chat box, chicken and veggies, chicken, fish, steaks. Wow, someone's having a good week. Steak on Wednesday. Protein bar, no time on my way to play pickleball. You know, yeah, I get that. I get that. All right, so you see how it works. Here's what's on tap for tonight. We are going to take a strong look at 2021 from a goal setting standpoint. Now I still see the food coming through. This was a horrendous mistake. Ramen, some red beans and rice. Okay, anyway. So here's what we're talking about tonight. We're going to talk about the financial elements of your life. There are 10 financial elements to your life. There are 10 financial elements. And most of us don't really realize that because we're constantly trying to keep the plates spinning in our life. And we don't realize that there's 10 things that we need to be aware of and that we need to work on. So we're going to talk about those 10 financial elements. We're going to talk about why it matters. We're going to talk about the stakes, not the steaks that someone's having on a Wednesday night, but the stakes. What's at hand? What are we dealing with? We'll talk about why this is important. And then finally, whether you've done it recently or not, we are collectively going to, with hundreds of us here tonight, we're going to set goals live in the event. We're going to set a 30-day financial goal. 30-day financial goal. We should have like a theme song for that. If you have any questions as we get going, by all means, put them in the Q&A box. And then as I ask for your responses, see if you can put those in the chat box. That's a lot of instructions. Before we go, salmon croquettes and rice. Darlene, you're killing me. Now my tacos seem completely inadequate, and I think my family will sense that as I prepare them. Hey, let's take a brief look back on 2020. I do my best not to think about 2020 too much, but I was going through some old pictures and videos of my family just the other day, and I found this old video of my son, Ted. And I want to share this video with you because it reminds me of 2020. You're just constantly getting battered from all directions. Now, my son Ted and I were at a Greek festival about 3 or 4 falls ago, when you could go out in public. And he wanted to ride this pretty intense ride. And he was 5 years old at the time. And I was like, Ted, I don't think I'm going to let you ride that. That looks a little intense. He's like, Dad, I got it. Let's do it. I was like, okay. So he rode the ride. I filmed it. I'm going to share this video with you now because to me, this is the perfect representation of what you and I have just been through in 2020. Get on the pad. Duck. Be ready to jump. Oh, this is a... Here is March when we all figured out we had to work from home. Oh, he's down. Oh, he's taking out another girl. Ted, get back on the pad. Duck. Here comes May when it's still going. Jump. Oh. Get on the pad. Duck. Here comes July when the pandemic is still going on. Jump. Here comes September when the pandemic is still Ted, going jump! On. Ted. Here comes election season. You can get out of the way if you want, Ted. Ted. Ted, this isn't going well, buddy. I can't. Here comes the holiday season. And here comes the first week of 2021. So anyway, that is my son, Theodore. That is truly my son, Theodore, in that video. So you can see what quite the parent I am, egging him on. All right. So there is a tremendous number of things going on in our financial lives at any given time. And sometimes we don't realize it. Why? Because we're feeding the baby bird that's asking for the food, right? If you've got a challenging financial life like most people do, you've got a lot of things going on. Sometimes the thing right in front of you is the only thing that gets the attention. But as you're about to find out, there are 10 distinct areas of your financial life that need attention. You just need to acknowledge that they exist and put some effort towards them. So that is what we're going to work on here tonight. So I don't want to overwhelm you. I promise I will not overwhelm you. But these are the 10 things that I want us to all have a little bit of a checkup in on tonight. Income. Income is the first thing that we need some awareness around. Our fixed expenses, our variable expenses, our relationship with debt, our relationship with budgeting, savings, investments. And as many of you know, savings and investments are completely different things. Okay? Savings and investments are different things. And so we need to have a different relationship with both of those. Insurance. Boy, that's a fun topic. We'll touch on it a little bit here tonight. You need to understand the benefits that you have through work. As we'll talk here in a few moments, I find one of the most common things I see is that people don't understand the benefits that they have through their employer. So therefore, they don't take advantage of some opportunities that are right in front of them. Region 9 and all the groups of Head Start take a lot of time, attention, and money to provide the benefits package that they do. I'll tell you, it is worth your time to spend 20, 30 minutes actually figuring out what you have. Next up, finally, major purchases, your relationship with major purchases. So here's how the program is going to work. Tonight, I'm going to go through each and every one of these. And what I'm going to ask you to do in the chat box is I'm going to ask you to put a yes, not yet, don't do it yet. I know you guys are eager. I'm going to have you put a Y for yes. If you have a good relationship in terms of understanding how your income, in this instance, flows into your household. That is to say, you can tell me within $20 or so what your net take-home monthly pay is. And you put a no or an in for no if you cannot do that. The fact of the matter is, your income is the fuel for your financial present. It is the ability to fund your financial past, which is your debt, and it will help you fund your financial future. That's the great work that George does with he and his team for you to help provide for your future. It's your income that does that. So right now in the chat box, why, if you could name your household take-home pay within 20 bucks, and in if you can not. By the way, just so you know, sometimes it's okay if you don't know your take-home pay because maybe you have a variable take-home pay. Maybe you or a significant other, someone who you share finances with, maybe you get tips or gratuity or commission or overtime, and that makes your pay fluctuate. I do have to say, as we all are challenged in our financial lives in different ways, if you happen to have a significant portion of your income being variable, right? If you don't know what it is, that is more challenging than the people who know exactly what they're going to make. You know, sometimes in our country, you hear how people are upset that they're on a fixed income. That is talked about in a negative way. And I understand that, right? It's not for me to say it's good or bad, but I will say this. Having a variable income actually makes it much more difficult to run your finances. It looks like a vast majority of you are putting yes. And so that is good to see. And also people putting some comments that they've received their stimulus payment, the second round of stimulus payment, which is nice to hear. Not to get too far into the weeds, but I do think we're going to see another round of stimulus sometimes in February. The real question is, will it be a standalone piece of legislation or will it be part of a bigger multi-trillion-dollar stimulus plan? No matter the case, I hope tonight, as we create some direction for you, improve some direction for you, you can have a feeling as to what to do with that. You know, a better idea of how it can serve you. All right, next up, fixed expenses. Do you know within, I don't know, say 50 bucks or so, what your very regular expenses, you know, the ones that don't change, your rent payment, your car payment, those regular expenses right now, if I had to put it to you, I was like, tell me the exact dollar amount. Could you tell me within 50 bucks or so, your exact fixed expenses for the month? Man, you know what? It occurs to me that George and his team have done a tremendous job with you, because I'm seeing a lot of whys. A lot of you are saying yes. You know what? And by the way, if you're saying no, that's okay too. We're going to be going through 10 elements of your financial life. My hope here tonight, and I'd love for you to keep score for yourself, is that you can have a yes for 5 or more. That's my goal for you tonight, is that you can say yes, that you have a great deal of awareness around 5 or more of the elements that we're talking about tonight. And if you can't, boy, aren't you glad you spent our time together here today, because that's something we're going to improve. So a good mix there, yeses and nos. Next up, now this one's tough. This one's tough. Do you know on average how much you spend on all sorts of stuff? You know, that is to say, do you know what your discretionary budget is? So if you have your income, you subtract your fixed expenses, which you always have. Do you know exactly how much you have to spend on other stuff? Some people do. Some people absolutely do. And some of those same people can say, yeah, and this much goes to groceries, and this much goes out to going out and having somebody else make me tacos, or this one's going out to buy stuff on Amazon. I will say there's some categories here that are going to trip people up, and this is probably one of them. The fact of the matter is, when you're struggling financially, it's not to suggest that you are, but if you ever find yourself really stressed and you're thinking, I want to do something so I feel better about this, digging into your variable expenses is a wonderful place to start. You know, a lot of us within the last couple of weeks, because it's a new year, we're in the mood to have a New Year's resolution as it relates to our fitness, right? We're like, okay, I want to do something about this body I've created over the last 10 months. So what do? Think of tracking your variable expenses like, you know, going for your first walk. It's something. It creates activity. It'll make you feel like you're doing something good. But the variable expenses are the very first place to start, because that's usually where people get out of control. All right, next up, how is your relationship with knowing, and I mean this, within 50 bucks or so of how much debt you owe the world? Is it a yes? Do you know within 50 bucks or so how much you owe the world? Or are you an in for no, as it's complicated, Pete? I'd have to explain it a little bit more. It's funny. Some of you put in for none. I have no debt. Well, then you know the number too. It's also 0. It's interesting. Something that I've personally done, my only piece of debt, fortunately, is our mortgage, right? And my wife likes to tease me because I'm obsessed with our mortgage statement. Every time we get a mortgage statement, I love to see the balance of our mortgage come down. I mean, it is sort of like the sick obsession I have. And it seems like some of you share that obsession because I'm seeing a lot of whys there tonight. So far we have 4 categories. 4 categories. So we're going to do a little check-in here. How many yeses have you put so far of our 4 categories? How many yeses, tell me in the chat, have you put so far in terms of your overall awareness? Oh, I like it. I'm seeing 2, 3, 4. I got a 1 in there. That's okay. My hope here tonight is after we've sort of talked through this, that you can go back and re-examine those things, because honestly, at the beginning of a year, just knowing what your income is, knowing what your fixed expenses are, knowing what your variable expenses typically are, and knowing your debt level, it's a fantastic way to start this year, unlike the less than fantastic start that we've had to this year. But we're not talking about that. All right, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. You guys are doing great. All right, 5th one. Okay, everybody. It's time to be honest. Do you keep a budget on a monthly basis? Yes or no? This is yeah. Here come the ends. Oh boy. You know what? I feel you though. A lot of ends. But I'll tell you this, if we're being completely honest with each other here, if you know your income, you know your fixed expenses, and you know your variable expenses, you kind of know your budget. But for me, when I think about budgeting, I think about, okay, we make sure that we spent what we said we were going to spend every single month. I find it to be about a 20 to 30 minute process a month. If you're not willing to put that work in right now, I totally get it. Because here's the thing, I recognize a lot of your names from the past events we've done. We've done what, 4? I've done 4 or 5 hours together within the last 10 months. When is the last time you spent 4 or 5 hours in a 12-month period on your financial life? Most people don't spend 4 or 5 hours working on their financial knowledge in a decade. So good for you for doing that in less than a year. That's fantastic. All right, next one up. Do you know what's in your savings account within $50? And savings account, I'm talking good old boring passbook savings, as they like to call them. What's in your bank account? Or, hey, some people are old school. They'll put it in a coffee can and bury it in the yard. I don't recommend that. Or they'll put it in a mattress. Also don't recommend that. It can make for lumpy sleeping. Do you know within $50 which is in your savings account? I have to say, a lot of whys here. Oh, Lori, it's okay. Lori says, yeah, because it's sad. Hey, I feel you. The thing is, though, and I have to admit, in my life, one of the most exciting things financially is when you get addicted to watching that number go up, right? And even when it's low and it's 0, watching it go to $25 and then to 50 and then to 100 and watching it climb. That's what this is all about. As we're going to talk a little bit later, our goal here tonight is to help you create some momentum. You've been there in your life when things are going your way in some area, relationships, your faith, your fitness, money, whatever. You've been there, right? Where it's like, okay, all right, we're making progress here. That's what we're trying to force that for you tonight, is to say, look, there's 10 areas of my financial life that I have to be aware of. And by increasing that awareness, I'm going to create some momentum. Okay, next up. Now, this one's a little tricky. Do you kind of know where your investments ended up? Well, this is the question. Do you know where your investments ended up at the end of 2020? Do you know where your investments ended up at the end of 2020? Now, this is a tricky one for a couple of reasons. Number one, yeah, I'd kind of like you to know, but I also appreciate the people that don't want to stare at their statement. George has been doing this a really long time. And here's what George will tell you. Staring at your investment statement is a really, really bad idea. It is not helpful. It is not helpful from a mental health standpoint. It's just generally a bad idea. Now, some of you would be surprised to learn that the stock market in 2020, the S&P 500 specifically, was up 16%. You know, I believe it was March 23rd when Ed and George and Fernando and I and Mitch from OneAmerica and many of you got together. March 23rd of 2020, we got together. Do you realize that was the low point for the S&P 500 for the year? It had fallen from its February 19th high to on March 23rd, it was down 34% from where it was on February 19th. Did you ever think when we spent that night together on March 23rd that same market would be up 16%? I'm not celebrating it in a way. It's like, oh, we all got money. I'm celebrating it in the sense that that's the nature of the market. There's 10 things that you and I have to worry about in our financial life. And if you chose to worry about the market last year, I think you missed the opportunity to work on some of the more fundamental things that will create stability for you. And that's why I'm glad we're spending time together here tonight. All right, so this next one's a trick question. Why? Because it's all apologies to people in the insurance industry. It's horrendously boring, right? Do you have a good grasp on the insurance coverage that you have? We're going to see a lot of ins here. We're just going to see a lot of ins here. Here's what I require for you to put a why. You need to know your auto coverage in terms of what your deductible is, you know, what your collision and medical coverage is. Do you know what type of life insurance that you have outside of work? Do you happen to have disability outside of work? Do you know about your homeowner's coverage? You know, that's a lot of really boring stuff that most people, myself included at times, don't have a lot of awareness around. I find that it takes about 15 minutes or so to familiarize yourself with your coverages, and all the adults in your household should know. True story time. Not that I tell fake stories, but this is a true story. Probably 5-6 years ago, I was in Louisville, Kentucky, speaking at a company. And right before I go on stage, my wife calls. My wife never calls right before I'm about to speak. She knows my schedule. She's panicked. She said, lightning just hit our house. There is a bush on fire. And by the way, this bush is just right on the other side of this wall that was on fire. We've now since named that bush Lazarus, because despite the fact that that bush got hit by lightning, it has come back to life and it is fine again. And she calls, she's like, who's our insurance agent? I was like, that's a good question, because of those things I generally deal with, but I couldn't because I was in Kentucky. Insurance is important for everyone in your household to understand what is going on. All right, 2 more to go. Benefits. Do you think you have a really good grasp on the benefits allotted to you, whether it be the actual benefits of sort of coverages through your employer, or even programs like this? I mean, all in, do you think you fully understand, and I'll say this, the dollars being spent on you by your organization, or for you by your organization? Do you understand that? Now, I'll say this. I'm keeping track with my very scientific method, my eyes on everything we've talked about tonight. You realize the most ends we're seeing are in this category. That's not unusual. I'm not being hard on you. I know this. 2020 was one of the hardest years that any of us have ever been through. We were forced to think about things and do things we never thought possible. And in some of those emergency processes that we went through made us stronger. I mean, it's not unusual for a person to have come out of 2020 just a stronger entity, a stronger person. I think in order to make that a complete story and to truly be the truth, you have to know what's going on with your benefits. Now, typically, people take the time to do that during open enrollment, which oftentimes is in the fall. But look, this year just started. If you're committed to increasing your awareness on all 10 of these categories that we're talking about tonight, I think it would take you less than an hour of your life to take the areas of which you had to put an end today and turn it to a why. I think it would take you less than an hour to get your awareness up. And we're going to set some goals here in just a little bit as it relates to that. Finally, okay, major purchases. Now, this one's tricky. Here's what I mean by major purchases. There are 3 major purchases that I think, I don't want to say a majority of Americans, but a vast number of Americans typically make. They make the purchase of a home, a vehicle, or a college education. Now, the reason I say this is if you happen to participate in any three of those things, do you know the interest rate associated with the loans if you had to borrow money? Do you know the actual cost of the purchase? And do you know when they will be paid off? If the answer is yes, you get to put a Y. If the answer is no, not really, Pete, you have to put an N. So let's put them now. We're seeing a mixed bag coming in. Rita, excellent job. A yes for you. Elsa, it looks like a no for you. That's all right. Beggs with the yes. Lori with the yes. If you're going to invest any time in trying to remedy some of the things we're discovering tonight, I have to tell you, the biggest payoff will come with this category. And you're thinking, why? How? Who cares? Well, let's take housing for a second. Your house is your largest expense, financed over the longest period of time, costing you the most amount of interest. I believe strongly in the importance of you knowing the details of that. Now, there's a lot of reasons why. One is when interest rates are low, when you happen to be a homeowner and you happen to have a high interest rate on your mortgage, just the knowledge of what your rate is in comparison to what the rates are out in the marketplace can be the difference between you saving a lot of money and not saving a lot of money. I talked to this couple the other day who had a pretty good financial situation. They honestly did. A really good financial situation. They had a 4.5% 30-year mortgage for no reason. Honestly, no reason. They had such a good financial situation, they could refinance like a 275, which would have saved them hundreds of dollars a month and tens of thousands of dollars over the course of the mortgage. The only way that they would able to have pulled that off without talking to someone who is kind of a financial professional is if they would have had more awareness around their major purchases. Okay. So here's what I got to have you do. If you're going to borrow for a college education, whether it's the first person in your family to go to college, the second person in your family to go to college, or the 10,000th person in your family to go to college, know how much the education costs, know what the interest rates are on the loans that you're using to send to those people to college. And more importantly, know when those loans will be paid off. Major purchases can take you down. If I'm being very frank, I don't want to get in a weird place with us here tonight. I think things are going pretty well between you and me. I think people give themselves sort of this weird get out of jail free card when they make a major purchase. They say, this is a big purchase. I'm uncomfortable. We're going to have to be willing to take a risk we normally wouldn't take. Let's do it. And then they jump into it. And that sort of willingness to take that risk absolves them from the importance of knowing what's going on. Okay. You've done this. I've done this. When you make a big purchase, the excitement comes when you acquire the item, not in knowing when it'll be paid off. Remember when you got approved for a loan or you bought something meaningful and important to you? It was the act of acquiring it and enjoying it for the first time that you celebrated, as you should have. But the idea of when you actually own it is completely foreign to most people. Yeah, you buy a house on a 30-year loan, you think, oh yeah, 30 years from now, we'll pay it off. But sometimes making the payoff as important as the acquisition of the item can make all the difference. So here's what we're going to do. We'll play a little game. There's no prizes. I have some chapstick. It's weird. So since March 23rd, which was my first event with you all, I've done hundreds of these now. And so I sit in this chair all day long and I get to talk to good people like you. And every once in a while, I take this ball of chapstick and I rub it on my face and I see myself do it live on a stream. And I think, yeah, that's weird looking. Anyway, so this might be the prize. If someone wins, I will send you my used chapstick. That does not seem sanitary. I don't think the CDC will like that. Let's just move on. I want to know your best 3 categories. Okay, so we just went through. I'm going to show you the categories again. I want right now, just put them in the box with me here. Just put, one, then a comma, then another one, then a comma, then another one. I want to know your best 3 categories. Best 3 categories in terms of your overall awareness, where you were like, you are in a groove in that category. Like, Pete, I know my income. I know exactly what's in my savings accounts, and I know all the details of my major purchases. So let's see them come in. Our income, debt, and savings. That's a good one. Dorothy, I feel you. That's a good one. Christina, 1, 2, and 10. So that'd be income, fixed expenses, and major purchases. You know, it seems to me that a lot of you are really in tune with your income, which is special. I appreciate that. Income, debt, and fixed expenses. Ms. Russell, income, debt, and savings. I appreciate you. All right, Rosa, insurance, savings, and fixed expenses. Income, major purchases, and debt. Good job, Judith. Now, you guys, at this point, you're testing my old eyes. You ever realize you're like, oh, no, I'm not that old. And now I'm like, I'm struggling reading these, and it's like 4 feet away. Okay, let's take a break here. So now you know where you have strength. And what's interesting about strength, and let me take the worst 3 on there because I don't want you putting them up yet. Here's what you need to know about the 3 words you just listed to me. When times are tough, when they legitimately are, or when just fear takes over and clouds up your financial life, here's what you need to do. You need to lean on those 3 things you just put in the chat box. Why? Because you have comfort around them. You know, you work really hard, not only at work, but you work hard in your financial life to create a nice living for yourself. And I'll tell you this, you have to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And the fruits of your labor are, if you have awareness in the 3 categories I just told you, and times get hard, you have the comfort to look at those 3 items and say, okay, let's get ourselves back together. Let's collect ourselves. You know, I have a friend who's a big skier. He loves to snow ski. And he tells me, like, when you fall down, you crash, you sort of get back up and you collect yourself. All right, do I have a ski? Do I have a boot? Do I have a pole? And you sort of just take inventory. When you're struggling, if this year punches you in the teeth at all financially, I want you to remember those 3 words. Okay? Now, here's the rub. It's possible that the reason you might be struggling is because of the worst 3. So right now, I want you to put the worst 3 elements that we just covered together. Type them in. We're not being negative Nellies here, right? We're not going to say that these things are taking us down, but it's possible that there's room for improvement with these particular categories. Variable expenses seem to be the queen of the prom here. Variable expenses, budgeting, I'm seeing a lot. Benefits. You know what? If we had a garage band, we could just go ahead and name it variable expenses, budgeting, and benefits, because it's a very popular sentiment in the chat right now. And I feel you. You know, I just saw someone put savings and investments. I want to talk about that for a second. The difference between savings and investment is an important distinction. This is something that George and his team talk to you all about a lot. Savings is to have your back if something goes wrong in the moment. And when you have a savings account, the goal is never to put it at risk. It's not necessarily to grow it aggressively. It's to have your back, right? Your investments are for later, right? It's not to say something is going to go wrong later. It's to say you probably won't have an income later from work, because at some point in time, you're not going to want to work. You're going to want to be retired. And so that's the distinction between the 2. Sometimes when people don't know what to do, or they're not focused, they sort of blend the 2 concepts between savings and investing, which means they end up borrowing against their investments if they get in trouble, right? I mean, if you get in trouble, you shouldn't go to your investments. You should go to your savings. And that's why it's important for the 2 to be distinct. Now, this is exactly why this matters here. The reason I want awareness in all 10 of these areas in your financial life is because I need you to be content with your finances right now. Don't feel pressure by that. Like, don't feel judged. Feel encouraged. There's a saying I like, and we employ this at our offices all the time. We don't shame beginnings, right? If we just went through those 10 financial elements right now, and you had to put no on a lot of them, it's all right. You're here, right? We're going to get some awareness around that. In fact, if you said 10 no's, turning one of those no's into a yes in the next few days, amazing. That's momentum. That's what we're trying to do. Here's what I do know. We were all shocked, surprised, just overwhelmed by what happened last spring. Every one of us. And I think that's what's interesting about our unique human experience, is that we all were in the same storm. We just happened to be in different boats, right? I take solace in that. I feel camaraderie with others because we all went through some pain together in 2020. And you know what? Pain may come again, but we should be better prepared this time. Yeah, maybe some of our savings are gone. Maybe our debt's a little higher because of what happened in 2020. But I don't think any of us are going to get blindsided by chaos in 2021. And I don't want to say I'm excited about that, but I'm comforted by that. I'm comforted by the fact that we learned how shocking life can be from a financial perspective. Now, so that's the now. Let's skip to the third one. Retirement should never surprise a person. Like it's not a thing you get to your end of your career and you're like, I was supposed to do. You know how it ends, right? You work, and then at some point you're not going to work, and so you need to have prepared for that moment. Again, what the work that George and his team does on a regular basis with you all, and the opportunities they provide to educate you and to guide you and to lead you, is for that very moment. Yes, George and his team want you to have a beautiful life now. That's why we have programs like this collectively and as a team. But really, George's work is really focused on making sure that very later, that you can look back on the work that you're doing today and know that you made a huge difference. Now, that middle one is pretty interesting, if we're being honest. I think that middle section, the later, is the most complex thing for a person to understand, for anyone to understand. Why? Because you understand, because of 2020, the importance of funding emergencies, right? I mean, we understand that now. It's quite clear. To understand retirement is not that hard to do either. But what about that middle group? What about later, but not very later? What is that? Well, that's where you can set some goals, right? That is where you can say, I want to buy a house someday. I want to send my daughter to college, right? I want to start a business. That is where your ability to have awareness in then those 10 financial elements, and then to set goals, to create momentum, that's where the rubber hits the road. Look, this was not some weird game show with a bald guy in the Midwest tonight just to see how aware you were about this. There's a reason we're doing this, because you have to take that awareness and make it mean something. You have to use the awareness to create momentum, to provide stability for yourself via goal setting. So that's what we're going to do right now. Now, I'll tell you, I've been to a lot of things, and I used to not like goal setting at all. I thought it was really cheesy. I was like, what are we doing here? I just want to go have some snacks at a break. But there are no more breaks. There are no more snacks because we're all virtual. So we're going to set goals. So here's how we're going to set goals tonight. You need to choose at least one of the elements that we just discussed. Specifically, I would recommend an element that you gave me an in for, that you didn't have that much awareness around. Beyond getting to a point of awareness with that, I need you to identify what a measurable positive change would be in that category. And then I need you to set a date. Now, I happen to like 30-day goals. Why? Because I have a very short attention span, as you may have gathered in our 4 hours or 5 hours together. So today is, I don't even know what today is. Today's January 13th or like March 380th. I don't know what time. I think it's March, or it's January 13th. By February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, when you're snuggled up with your sweetie with a mask on, I want you to have accomplished something you're about to identify in a measurable way by February 13th. Here's an example. Here's what we're going to do. Let's say I had an in for savings. I just don't know what's going on. And so tonight or tomorrow, I look at my savings account, and someone says, invest in finding a sweetie to snuggle up with. Oh, I feel you. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I think Mrs. Planner's in the other room. She might be listening. So here's an example. Let's say I identify savings as an issue. I don't have a lot of awareness, but then I look tonight and there's $130 in my account. Okay, $130. What if 30 days from now, it's $200? So the quantifiable, the measurable change is that $70 to save $70 more by February 13th. You see how this works? Because there's three very important elements to this. Again, the element itself, the what you're trying to accomplish, the amount of money or some quantifiable measure to accomplish, and then the day. What I can't have you do here tonight is to walk away and say, yeah, I don't know much about my benefits. I'm going to do better there. I mean, I don't want to say who cares because it seems really callous, but we got to measure this. We have to have a point. We have to create a point where you either succeed at that or you fail at that. And we have to do it by a certain period of time. This is how you create momentum during tough times, is you say, all right, I'm going to force myself to do it. Not that you care about my fitness goals. Honestly, if you did, I'd be concerned about you. But I've taken my fitness incredibly seriously since around June 30th. I'm a numbers guy. June 30th or so last year. I mean, if you remember what I looked like March 23rd of 2020, much different, right? And so going into 2021, I have very specific fitness goals that I will either succeed at or fail, and I will know on specific dates. And I highly recommend the same for you. So here's what I would love to do right now as we're all sitting here together. I was going to say tonight, but it is tonight for me. I'd love in the chat right now, and you don't have to put a number. If the number is making you nervous about oversharing, just put the letter X, X marks the spot. So maybe put, Pete, I'm going to figure out what my debt is, and I'm going to have it be $130 less by February 13th. So right now in the chat box, what I'd love you to do, if you've got your wits about you still after this program, I'd love you to commit to an area you think you're struggling with. And again, if you don't know the balance, but you can always say, I'd like it to be X number of dollars higher or lower. So let's do that now. In the chat box, commit to do something by February 13th, a certain amount of money in one of those categories. I will also accept a full insurance or benefits review. I will also accept a major purchase detail review by February 13th. All right, I'm feeling this now. Save $100 by February 13th of 2021. Ooh, I like that. Save money on food to not eat out so much. Pete, I want to go down to $100 less by February 1st. Kimberly's going next level here. She said, I don't need those extra 12 days of February. You keep them, Peter. I mean, there's only 28 days in the month anyway. So she went by February 1st. Benefit review. I like that. I appreciate that. All right. Debt payoff. One debt by the hospital by March. Okay. I can't tell you how much I love that. Why? Because there are certain debts that we sort of let sneak away from us. And medical debts are at the top of those lists. Right? We get mad at medical debts for lots of reasons. One, we're upset about how our coverage works. We're upset about the medical problem itself. So we tend to just let them creep out there, and they often go to collections really fast. So I love that. Ooh, save $500 for my son's wedding by February 13th. Hey, congrats. You're the father of the groom. So what that means, you pay for the cash bar. $500. You think it's going to be enough? No, it's a good goal. I like it. Debt reduction by $100 plus, Jody, on by February 13th. I'm loving this. This, I have to be honest with you all. This is the best part of my job. I love my job, but this is the best part of my job, seeing all the work you're committing to. So here's the key. If I didn't read yours, I'm sorry. And by the way, I'm proud of you for setting it. Here's the key. Hit it. By February 13th, hit it. Okay? Hit it. Tell someone. Tell a loved one you're going to do this. Recruit them into the process. Tell a coworker what you're going to do, and then do it. And when you achieve it, don't go below the $100 at a party, right? Don't go below it, but set another goal, measure something else, and then repeat the process. That's how you create momentum. It's January. We're going to even say the first 13 days didn't count. It's a do-over. It's a free look period, right? We're starting now. I don't love New Year's resolutions, but I do appreciate the fact that they get some people to create some momentum in their lives. And I think it starts with awareness. So that's where we'll go. George, I'm going to bring you back. You're the perfect person to put a beautiful bow on what we've done here today. So hopefully you're still there. You've still got your sweater on. You can turn your microphone on if you like. George, if people want to get a hold of you and have someone from your team work with them, can you help us understand the best way to do that?
Pete, I can help with that. This is
Oh,
Mitch.
hey, it's Mitch. Hey,
How are
Mitch.
you?
Good.
I'll pop myself on. Hey, everybody. First of all, a happy birthday to my good friend George Fraser. All of you, he had a big milestone birthday, so he hit the big 6-0. He's not embarrassed for me to tell that. There he is. George, you're on mute, so come on back and let people know how to get in touch with you.
No worries. Absolutely. Of course, we're always available by email, which is gfraser, Fraser, at rbgadvisors.com. And I'll forward this over to Fernando and Ed, and they can pass it on to all of you folks. My cell number is on 24 hours, 7 days a week, 602-819-3591. And I have a team of folks who can talk to you. If you have friends who require the help in Spanish, we can provide that, and would love to chat with you at any time at all. Our job is to help you folks have a better and more fulfilling life today, as per Pete, talking about how we can fix things. But our goal is to make sure that you're in the right place when it comes to retirement as well. So we're available always at your convenience.
All right, George. So, hey, thank you so much. And thank you all for being part of this event. I've just really enjoyed these events we've done with Head Start. And I appreciate George and Matt from TIA for making these possible. And of course, Ed, I appreciate your support, and Fernando as well. So I wish you all a great 2021. George, I'm signing off. So everyone have a great night and enjoy all those tacos that apparently all of us are making.
You too, Pete.
Well, thank you, Pete, for your time, and George and Matt for your words. I just wanted to just remind everybody that this session was recorded, and we'll go ahead and distribute that within 24 to 48 hours. We'll have a recording up, so you can listen to all the great information that Pete had to offer. Let us know if you have any questions. Go to our website, region9hsa.org, and you'll find more information about George, OneAmerica, Nuveen, retirement benefits group. All of that is up on our website. So feel free to give us a call, send us an email. We're happy to share that information over to George's team. So I want to thank again everybody for joining us, and thanks George, Mitch, Matt for your time, and Pete, of course. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, Fernando.